Hi, good morning, friend.
Good morning. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Hey, everyone out there in the land of I'm Janna Turner. This is my friend Jonathan Jacobs, and this is the his money stream for today. Um, Jonathan and I, well, should we share our origin story and all the things that brought us to this moment?
Please, I think it's so relevant to what we're going to talk about.
Agreed, agreed. So Jonathan and I met in 2021. Um, Uh, I served on the board of A Call to Men from 2020 to 2024. And in 2021, um, activist, author, leader of A Call to Men, Ted Bunch, and Anne Marie Johnson Teague released the Book of Dares, which was a beautiful little tome of, I don't have it right here, 100 ways for boys to be bold, kind, and brave.
Mhm.
And I asked a good friend of mine, Anne Choquette, queen of teen women's magazines. She was editor in chief of 17 uh, during very formative years. And I said, Anne, who are the good guys that you know who want to have these conversations about boys and men? And she said, I did this. I had been doing these dinners for badass babes for a couple years. And I did a badass dudes one recently. And there was this wonderful guy named Jonathan Jacobs there. And I think he's your guy. And she connected us. And as suspected, we were fast friends.
Mhm.
We'll learn more about Jonathan's background as we dive into this. Um, but we have honestly been trading notes about culture and media and marketing and storytelling and all things, gender and politics, but really through the lens of culture and how do we evolve the way men and women show up together and work together to build the world that we want to build. So that there's no way to double click on all the pieces there and the texture of our friendship, but I'm so glad that you're here on the His Money stream with me.
No, I'm
uh,
thrilled to be here.
um, I think it's important to share all the things you've done and all the things that you are, but I also want to start first with, how do you make money? What's your job right now?
That's a great question. First of all, thank you for telling that story. It's so fun to think about how far you and I have come in knowing each other for like 4 years now. That's really incredible. And the way our relationship has evolved and the things that we've done together. So, how do I make money? I'm going to answer that question the same way I answer every big, hairy, thorny, crazy question that I encounter in life, which is tell you about my purpose and who I am. And the answer to that question is someone gave me a really good piece of advice once. And they said, in life, you do three things: one thing for your head, one thing for your heart, and one thing for your wallet. I'm going to tell them in reverse order because you asked me what I do to make money. So I'm going to finish with that. For my heart, I do men's work and male advocacy. For my head, I'm a community organizer. And for my wallet, I am a digital marketer and brand strategist. So from 2011 to 2021, I co founded, built, scale, and sold a marketing agency by the name of Digital Natives Group.
Woo, woo.
Sold that, and then kind of wandered the desert for a little while, figure out what I want to do next. Worked as a consultant, fractional CMO, and then in 2024 co-founded Loudmouth, which is my newest marketing agency specializing in organic community building, influencer campaigns, etc. So they're building a much smaller organization, but working with brands like Duolingo, Mountain House, and as well as some thought leaders and things as well.
Awesome. Tell us about selling your business. You and I have actually never talked about,
Mm.
you know did you approach them? Were you ready to like move on to your next thing? Like, how talk about how your time, your money, and your
Yeah,
relationships
yeah.
brought you to that moment.
Yeah, I let me tell this right. I think one thing that's really important for me to address first is why you have such a very appropriate name for your Twitch handle, and mine is Reign of Yaddle. For viewers who do not know what that is, it is very important that I explain. the original time I joined Twitch was to join Star Wars Twitch streams, and Yaddle is my favorite character in the Star Wars universe. She is a female Jedi of the same species as Yoda, who was held prisoner inside a planet for 100 years and then sacrificed herself to save the population of that planet. So I think it's an amazing story, and everybody should read up on it. She is the Joan of Arc of the Star Wars universe. Uh, the answer to your question about selling my business. So one thing I want to call out, I know we have Jay is backstage helping out here. Jay, if you hop over to my website in the marketing section, there's a couple links to articles where I talk about the journey in full that people might be interested in. So I apologize for giving you a secretarial task, but thank you so much. So the story of selling my business, it was a real challenge and a very difficult process. So the origin for that is 2019. My business had a cardinal sin, and it was that we had 4 business partners. And Janna, you're a founder like myself, and I'm sure some people listening have started or considering starting their own business and going on an entrepreneurial journey. And 4 is way too many. A business, there's way too many cooks in the kitchen. Even 2 is difficult, but 4, again, we're just kind of amplifying that in a crazy way. And come May of 2019, I think is when we started this discussion, we're all turning 30. So having our quarter life crisis or third life crisis, depending on where we are with science at any given time. And just realizing that we couldn't keep it going anymore. It was too emotionally draining for all of us. So we start the business of selling. I would say we did not really do it with much intention at that point in time. We hired a consultant to help take us through the process because we knew we couldn't do it ourselves. And so we're
Hold
getting
on,
ready.
just to
We're getting,
clarify, an M&A consultant or like a banking
yeah,
consultant?
an M&A consultant. Yeah, someone who specialized in mergers and acquisitions. So we go through the process of getting ready for that, and I skim over that when I tell the story because that's kind of what it felt like. It was just a lot of preparing documentation. It was a lot of getting all of these assets together that we had in place in disparate locations like a Google Drive and a Dropbox and physical file storage so that we could put together this portfolio on who we were. And I also say that because I don't think there was much reflection on any of us going on at that point in time. We were just focused on the nuts and bolts of doing this. And we go to market in January 2020. Not the best time to go to market, as we would soon find out. But come March 2020, we had an offer on the table that we were interested in approaching. And then I distinctly remember I was in Montana, I was stepping outside a cafe, I took a phone call, and then they pulled the offer because this was just a few days after the world pretty much shut down, or at least we should say the US finally shut down due to COVID. Ended up being a really interesting period in a number of ways. COVID, I hate to say this, but for our business was very good because we were digital marketing. So everybody was moving their spend online. People were spending more time online. So there was more money to go around. There is definitely probably a psychological component that's very similar to survivor's guilt that's going on, where you're looking at the world around you burning and we're going, yet we're making more money than ever. And that feels really uncomfortable and really strange. So that was kind of a lot to process because we're going, well, the longer this goes on, it's better for us, but it's not better for society. This is really strange. How do we accept what we're doing? How do we also pay that back into the world to make sure that we're uplifting those who are getting hurt while we're experiencing kind of, I wouldn't say pleasure, but experiencing financial uplift or financial bounty in a way. And then come that summer, this original buyer did re-engage with us. It ultimately was a very good thing that they came back because the deal fell through. But that was the moment in time where I think all of us finally hit pause and started to understand, oh, wait, what do we actually want out of this? And I'm sure people who are watching this can relate to the idea of like you move really, really far along and then you're at the precipice of the cliff and you're about to jump and you're like, wait, why am I doing this in the first place? We had never stopped to do that. It reminded me when I was in college, I went to study abroad for a year, but I was in Morocco at first. And my dad didn't ask me until we were on the way to the airport. He was like, why are you going here? And I was like, don't you think it's a little late to ask me that question? Like, you had to sign all this paperwork and help me buy airline tickets. Like, this is not the time. I was like, I kind of don't want to answer because you waited so long. But it was really great for us because again, it made us hit pause and say, wait, what do I actually want out of this? And the articles that I mentioned, that you might be able to find on my website, that's when I started to go like, okay, well, what are my non-negotiables? What do I need out of a deal? What financially does this need to look like for me? So I kind of sat down and started to pinpoint, okay, well, what do I need from a deal? I want cash up front. I want mentorship from someone. I want to be sitting in some type of like VP or senior VP role. I want to be able to have a home for all my employees and all my clients. So I was able to kind of come up with a scorecard so we could start to grade the deals. And what was helpful was that we realized this deal was actually not for us. So we ended up passing on that. We went on
Mm.
another 6 months until the beginning of 2021, and then we ended up finding the pair of buyers who would eventually acquire the company because we split it into two pieces,
Mm.
and it worked out for the better because not only did we sell everything and get everything we wanted for the most part, we sold the business for more money because we split it into two parts, and we got almost all the cash up front in both deals. So we ended up realizing much more personal income and financial gain than we could have in any other model or situation.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And there's a fair amount of serendipity and timing that
Mhm.
comes up for me in that story. Um, there's so many beautiful things there. I think
Yeah.
also I imagine there are other people in our community here, given that is the land of that can say like, yeah, there were parts of COVID, like COVID was awful.
Hmm.
And what COVID brought about in the world could have positive impact on me
Right.
personally, on my community, on my world, and on the world in terms of awareness of how we exchange information and how we get
Hmm.
information and understanding. I think there were a lot of people who were not digital natives, to bring it all forward, who were thrust into digital environments during COVID,
Hmm.
like to their chagrin, but also bittersweet, right? And then they have more through lines to their grandchildren
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
other people. So we embrace the nuance here all the time.
Yeah. And
I
I
wear my
think we're,
nuance necklace.
yeah. And Jay is mentioning it in the chat, and we were talking about it earlier. Like, it's also a perfect metaphor for, I think, what's happening right now, right? The world is kind of feels like it's burning around us, and yet I'm getting to sit here and talk to one of my good friends and have this conversation. I live in Los Angeles. It's a beautiful day outside. Like, I got to spend all day with my girlfriend and her family yesterday. Like, all these beautiful things are happening, and yet it feels like when you look around us, there's also so much tragedy and so much pain. And so I think it's something that we learn how to balance continuously as we go through life, because these situations happen more often than I think we're comfortable admitting.
Because you mentioned that you were in Los Angeles, it's
Mm.
important to mention also that Jonathan is a native New Yorker and it is core to his personal brand. And as such, I am using my Zabar
I
badge.
saw Zabar's. I already clocked that.
It's just for you. I use this
Thank you.
instead
I
of my
appreciate
Yeti
it.
today.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Because now I really just want a bagel and some fish.
Yeah, totally. I got one yesterday, but egg and cheese, salt, pepper, ketchup, hot sauce.
Mm.
Um,
At least you ordered
uh,
it correctly and not Andrew Cuomo's order. So thank you.
oh, I know. Remember we were talking about that? Jonathan and
Mm.
I got to be in the same city. Was it last week or the week before? We attended the Fatherhood Summit that was put on by
Mm.
Equimundo and Moms First. Um, oh, Jenna's saying, wait, what was his order? So apparently someone asked Cuomo what his breakfast order was, and he said it was like eggs, cheese, and bacon on an English muffin,
Yeah.
as if that's a New Yorkie order and or the way to describe your order. It was insane.
But and also the prompt was like, "What is your go-to bagel?" And he goes, "English muffin," which is not a bagel. It's like, "What's your go-to pizza?" And I was like, "Oh, linguine." Like, no, these are very different. These are very different things. And then it's also just like, come on, like if you're a New Yorker, it's not egg and cheese and bacon. First of all, not the right order, but also the
Right.
pronunciation is bacon, egg, and cheese. Like
Bacon, egg, and cheese.
it's
It's
one
one
word.
word.
It is
Yeah.
one word.
One word. Bacon, egg, and cheese, salt, pepper, ketchup, hot sauce. Yeah.
Yes, it is very much like the Vance donut order, Jenna. Thank you. That is a good callback. A good but sad callback.
Yeah. And, this is when we have leaders that are trying to make themselves, oh, ketchup and hot sauce. Yeah, I got that from my husband. And it, especially when I'm low on sleep, it's a good one. Um, oh, what were we talking about? Oh, these leaders, people that want to lead us,
Mhm,
are aspiring to lead us, have led us astray. This goes back to one of the core things that we talk about on this show, this stream, about
mhm,
money and men's relationship with money and men's money stories. Um, and I want to go back to some of your first money stories. The
mhm,
stories that we have from our childhood are the stories that we have had the longest. They are the most deeply ingrained in us. And so, one of our favorite questions here on His Money is, what is your first money memory?
mm.
Positive, negative, or innocuous, but what's your first money memory?
Yeah, it's a good question, and where I struggle with that is like, what's my most significant money memory versus what is my earliest? Because I do think I sit with the significant one the most, and it clouds my ability to see sometimes earlier than that. And the one that I'll go to is probably when I was in high school, which is not to say money was a factor before that or not. But the one that I think about is when I was in high school, I really wanted to be a journalist. Like I wanted to be a journalist and a writer. I wanted, I was in New York, so I wanted to go to Columbia. I wanted to go to journalism school, and I wanted to work. You want to work for the New York Times or the Atlantic or like some big institution. And my father's thing was just always journalists don't make any money, writers don't make any money. You have to do something else, like, and then you can do that later. And I was just like, but that's not what I want to do. Like, I want to be a writer. I want to unearth these stories. I'm not interested in working in like finance or being a doctor. Disappointing to a Jewish family, but whatever. Um, and that's what I want to do. I want to write. But it was just this whole thing that I was constantly being told of, just like, you don't make any money doing that. And I think it builds into what I had for a very long time and probably still have, which is a lot of the like scarcity mindset around just like there are only certain jobs that make money and certain ones don't. And if you pursue those ones, it's going to be a constant kind of hamster wheel for you of constantly trying to chase where your next source of income within that is going to come from. And I think that affected my ability for a really long time to be able to forget about money, just like pursue the things I wanted in life, because I was viewing it through more of an economic lens of like, will this give me money immediately or not, versus will this put me on a path to realize the lifestyle that I want to have, whether that comes through finances, whether that comes through relationships, whether that comes through like community aid, whatever that might look like. That's probably the thing with money that I think about the most
Yeah.
from
Well,
early memories.
and I think you would agree this comes from a place of love. When our parents,
Mhm,
they want to set us up, they want us to be safe. If they feel that it's their job to provide for us, they
mhm,
want to provide us in the now with what we will need in the
right.
future. And at the same time, it's like, okay, what about the far future, right? How
Mhm,
to um and it's also interesting to me sitting here on the platform that we're on, because imagine if you had told your dad, like, I'm going to play video games for a living and that's how I'm going to make money. Right.
right.
And like, there are people who legitimately do that now. And,
Mhm,
that's also, you and I talk a lot. Your company was called Digital Natives. We have come of age at a time of rapidly changing
mhm,
media and marketing and information, and how we get the news that we get, whether it's hard news journalism or um, soft news lifestyle culture. Although that's a
mhm.
dichotomy we need to move beyond. We'll talk about
Yeah.
that more on the land of and. Or what does that bring up for you, or for the audience? We want to hear from everyone who's tuning in too. It's been like 20 minutes and we've covered so much because money touches everything. But talk to me about also, like, how did you guys decide to name your business Digital Natives, and how do you think about that
Oh gosh.
changing of?
It's funny. There was I don't even remember if there was like a conversation where we sat with that for a really long time. The origin story we always told was that my business partner Ben, his grandmother once saw an email that he wanted to forward to her. To that she wanted to forward to him, excuse me. His grandmother wanted to forward the email to him. And she did it the only way she knew how, which is that she printed it out, she put it in a manila envelope, and she mailed him a printout of the email. And that was her version of forwarding it. And it was like she was a digital immigrant, we're digital natives. And it was like that story plus, I believe the educator's name was Mark Prensky. and he had kind of coined the terminology around that. So we kind of borrowed it a little bit from there, and we were convinced we were the only people that thought of this. But I remember Googling, and we were like, there was an agency in Central Europe somewhere. There was like a digital natives collective another place. But yeah, that was how we settled on that. And I think for us, we also kind of focused it a little bit. Jenna, you talk about like when we came of age. Um, we were like the digital translators, because I think we were this last group, especially where I sit as an elder millennial. We were this last group coming through of getting a mix of things like Legos and Lincoln Logs, but then like the early platforms of the Sega Genesis, the Super Nintendo, and then having the computer and the internet connection in the home. So I think we got a little bit understanding how we can communicate across the two kind of disciplines here and the two identities that's sitting on people who only grew up in one or the other. So we have a unique ability in that way. But yeah, that was how a lot of the language that we used around talking about that.
Yeah. Um, I also, one of the things I want to break through on this show, on this stream that we're doing, is not
Mm,
just talking about money, but also talking about like figures. Are you
mm.
comfortable talking about the specifics of the deal of selling your agency as much as you can?
I'll talk about anything with you.
Okay. What did that look like? Like, I don't, is there anyone else here are there any other entrepreneurs, builders in the chat in the community here? Maybe just emote or do something to let us know you're here, because I think this is something that it seems really sexy to talk about, like, oh,
Mhm,
I sold my business or my business was acquired, right? Like, I built something that matters that other people wanted to pay money for, right? Like, that's the
mhm,
entrepreneur's dream on a basic
mhm,
level
mhm.
and on a macro level. So I want to spend a little more time in that, and I feel like there's probably other people that, you know, give us the numbers. I think we need to talk about
Yeah,
the numbers more than we do.
um, you'll have to forgive me. I'm a little bit gray on some of the details because I haven't talked about it in full in a really long time. I did a lot of interviews after it happened, but it's been a couple years. So if I remember correctly, I believe we sold the whole thing for I want to say around $800,000 across the two deals. We were a business that did about 1.5 million in revenue, I think, or somewhere between 1.5 million and 1.75 million in our last year. We were about 15 people. We were not trying to build a $50 million company. I don't ever want to build a $50 million company. That is not interesting to me. So we sold for about 800,000. It was across two deals. One was selling our development agency, and the other was selling our like brand marketing, social media management agency within that. The sale of the web was pretty straightforward. We got 50% of the cash up front, and then once all the deals were signed, where all the new clients re-upped with them, we got the other 50%. So that was easy, happened in a really quick time frame. The other one was a little bit more traditional in the sense that there were some more spaced out annual milestones, but we still got 80% of the cash for that up front, which is
Great.
an amazing number to get for a service based business. I think
Yeah.
that's the other thing a lot of people forget. When you're starting a business that doesn't have like its own IP, doesn't have its own product, you're not going to get a crazy multiple when you exit. You will maybe get a deal equal to your signed future billings, with maybe a little bit on top of that if they think that you have the potential to grow it. So for us getting the value that we did, that was really impressive as far as I'm concerned. So we got
Agreed.
80% of that 600,000 or so up front, and then the idea was that I'd get 10% at each of the next two milestones over the years that came after that. And my partners and I discussed. I was the only partner going with that piece of the business, so I would have the entitlement to that future 20% because it would be based on my performance basically in that role. Do I maintain the clients and hit rev goals? Ultimately, after about 10 months, this was a business that was being put together by private equity. And if anybody watching the stream or in the chat knows, private equity doesn't normally build stuff. They normally are there to take it, strip it for parts, and sell it. So it was radical that somebody got them to build something in the first place. Ultimately, they decided they were tired of it. They bought our agency and another three, I think, when we came together. They were trying to put together their own kind of brand marketing flywheel. Decided they didn't want to do it anymore and shut us down. They were willing to give me the business back, and I was like, I kind of called the bluff. I was like, I don't want it anymore. Like, you figure it out. So that ended up being good because I was able to negotiate a better like severance package and exit from it. I got like 6 months severance. They gave me, I don't think I got all of the final 20%, but I got at least half of it because I kind of said like, I'm 2 months away from getting this other 10% and I've hit all your goals already. So I kind of deserve that. Um, and then it was great because I was able to give my employees an additional month of work because all of our contracts have a 30-day notice for termination, as is pretty
Mm.
standard in the service industry. So we were able to keep them employed for an additional month and get paid while they were looking for work, which worked out to the benefit for some of them. And then, yeah, I think I believe it was the beginning or end of May 2022 was the last month of operation for us.
Thanks for spelling all that out. I think
Yeah.
it's really helpful for people to hear these stories. And Jay asked in the chat, like, let's talk about some of the emotions and the feelings around it. Like, how did it feel to find out that they were like, oh, actually, like, when they were like,
Mm.
do you want this back? That's talk to me
It
there.
was, I mean, it was really scary. I'll say a couple things. I knew it was coming, so they kind of they pushed the CMO out or asked him to leave in February, and he was the person that I had negotiated the deal with. He was like the only C-suite person I really interacted with, so I knew that that meant some big change was coming. I was happy to be done because I didn't like the way things were operating, and I also didn't necessarily have a values alignment with some of the other agencies that were brought in, and that was not my favorite thing in the world. Um, I will also say this
Wait,
though,
can you
like,
give us some examples there? Can you, within,
yeah, I
examples
mean,
around?
there were just things like, listen, I'm obviously a very liberal, very progressive, very community oriented person, and I would say some of the people involved were not necessarily the same way. And like, there was an example I'll point to that on one of the first all hands with all four of the new agencies involved, one of the other agency folks dropped the R word and to describe the team that they were a part of. And I was just, and you could tell immediately, like a bunch of my people from my organization went off camera. Like you could tell they were chatting on the side, like, oh my God, can you
Like they
believe
were
they
calling
just,
someone unintelligent and they used the R word, or they were
yeah,
like,
like referring to their entire team as a bunch of R
right.
words. In their estimation, this was in like a loving way. Like, oh, you're saying, oh,
Oh,
this is
oh, a
my
bunch of
dumb friend.
bozos. Like a bunch of
Exactly.
bozos. I love those
Yeah, look
guys.
at these clowns.
Right.
So,
Right.
so my
Oof.
team was like aghast at that. It doesn't matter why they were aghast at, they were. And then I, kind of did an intervention. Intervention's not the right word. I called the CMO later that day because I was kind of like, all right, this is now me. This was a month into being there, and I'm learning how to be a member of a team for a team where I'm not in charge
Right.
of
But
everything for the first time.
you're still
Yeah, I'm
leading
leading
your
my group
team.
exactly. Yeah,
Right. You're
so
leading a team that you have been the primary leader of now within a new
right.
system.
Yeah, so how do I advocate for them in this environment and make sure we're staying up? So I spoke to someone higher up and I was like, hey, like this was not cool. Like, I'm not saying you got to turn around and fire this person, but like we need to make it clear that this type of stuff is not like tolerated in this environment. And the person who did this, I should also say, like English was not this person's first language. And so
Oh,
I was like, it's very possible that where I had exposure as a child growing up in school, we use this word. Then I eventually learned you don't use this word in this way. And this person may not have
right.
had the same conversations. However, we live in a climate or where someone certainly must have said something to you at some point, or you must have been exposed to material at some point that made it clear that that's not a necessary belief, a necessary word to use. So I want to give a little bit of grace because of that. I would hope that if I did something similar, if I was learning a new language, but this person had been here for like 20 years. Um, and so I said that to him, and part of the feedback I got was like, yeah, I'm definitely going to talk to him, and I'll let you know when that happens. But also, your team can't be in an ivory tower, and you have to learn how to like interface and interact with others. And so when I tell you I wasn't necessarily upset when they made me get rid of the business, it was because these were not necessarily bad people, but these were not my people, and I'm okay
Yeah.
to move on from it.
Right. I think that's a very Land of Anne saying, right? These were not bad people, but they were not my people.
Right.
Um, and and
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that story, because
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
think
Of
we talk
course.
a lot about like values alignment, and it's
Hmm.
almost like talking about something being quality, right? It's like
Mhm.
it's either high quality or low quality. Like quality itself is not the thing. So when we talk about
Right.
values alignment, I'm trying as much as possible to name what those are.
Yeah.
We do that in the boys and men's uplifting work that we do. Um, and we need to name the thing. So thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that
But and
story.
even in that work where we talk a lot, with Bowie's Club, with other spaces that we have, like it's relevant and important there too. There are a lot of people like you and I who do men's work, and I don't like the way they do it. It's not necessarily that it's bad or wrong. It's just not for me. And it's great that we can have a communal space where we can share learnings and co-develop things, but I don't want to be a part of their program. Like that's not the way I look at this. Like it's not the way I want to interact with this stuff. For instance, Everyman and doing retreats to the woods, not for me. Don't like it, don't want to do it, don't really care for it. But for some people it's this amazing gateway and transformative process, and I love that that exists for them. But I'm not going to go spend time doing it. Like I'll help
Yeah.
the organizers and founders when we have a community space to talk about these things and say, how can I want to help you get more people into it, because that's how some people need to experience it. But like that's not the only way to do this work. There's so many different avenues that we can go through.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same. I mean, my role in this boys and men's work is to uplift and buoy everyone else's things because we need this work to expand. And
Right.
oftentimes also it's like, oh, what's the messaging that will get through, right? Like how do we meet men and boys where they are and
Right.
acknowledge their emotional health and all of these pieces. And there's no one message. And my
No.
role is to say, like, Jonathan, you know how to talk to your folks. So and so knows how to talk to their folks, and we need to do it. Uh,
Right. And that's
we need to
exactly
do
the,
it.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. There's so many. We've covered so much in the like 30-40 minutes that we're here. I think also the the term legacy.
Mm,
Uh, when we go back to words carrying weight and things that men care about or things that are important. You and I talk about relevancy too,
mhm, mhm.
right? When we talk about personal brand and the work that I do and that you do too, in terms of helping authors tell their stories and
Yeah.
being relevant and tied to the now. So how do you think about relevancy versus legacy? And I want to bring this into your story of your father when you find that door.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this at the outset, like I don't think about I think thinking about legacy is one of the most destructive things that people can do. And I say that not because I want to give people a free pass to behave in any way they want, but I think our focus on legacy encourages us to hoard resources. I think it
Mm,
encourages us to be self-centered. I think I think it encourages us to be egotistical, and it doesn't encourage us to put
mm,
community first, because the question is never about like what am I doing for people? It's what am I doing to protect the story of myself. So I try
right.
really hard not to think about legacy. I try much harder to think about, I'm going to take your relevancy and push it into stewardship. That's the word I
Mm,
really care about. Am I leaving behind a world that is better than the one I inherited? Said differently, am I building a world where every child who comes after me has every opportunity available to them that I did and more? And if I have done that, then that's all I care about. I don't care if people talk about me after I die. I don't care if there's a statue made of me. I've always said, like, when I die, literally just throw my body into the ocean. I don't come see me. Don't bury me anywhere. Like, forget, you can forget I was here. There's 7 billion people on this planet. And when you think about how many people have lived all time, like, I was talking to someone the other day and I was like, we all know George Washington, like he lived, and there were these other people that lived then, but how many other hundreds of thousands of millions of people lived at that time that are not remembered? But they made probably amazing contributions to the communities they live in. They probably did something to educate a George
yeah.
Washington or a George Washington Carver. Like we can name any number of people. That's their legacy. They're not remembered, but they probably
Right.
did something amazing to make that happen. And I think
I have
that's the
to I
only,
have to quote Hamilton. Sorry, I can't keep it in.
yeah,
Who lives, who dies, who tells your story?
yeah. And so the way I think about it is just if I positively affect my community, if my community is better off tomorrow than they were today, my legacy is the fact that that community still exists. My legacy is the
Yeah.
fact that people emerged from that community, and only I need to know that. It doesn't matter. Like, you use kind of my family as an example, and I'll move this to start to talk about my dad a little bit. Um, and I think that, listen, I'm the end of my bloodline. There's nobody else. Like, it's just me. I don't have children, and my father had no other kids. My father had no other kids. My grandparents on my paternal side had no other children. On my paternal grandfather's side, he had no other nieces or nephews, and that's the side of my family that came through the Holocaust. Like, I'm it. And so if and when I die, there's no more legacy for that lineage from a biological perspective, and there's no need for anybody else to remember us. Like, our story is done being told. So I do think about that a lot. How do I continue to tell a story, especially because of the Holocaust and Jewish identity, and the rise of anti-Semitism we're seeing now, that component of it. But it's also, to move into the conversation about my dad, I don't think a lot of this was anything I thought about before he died in the summer of 2020. And it's a really complicated but important story that I'll tell. I was getting ready to move out. I was actually in the process of moving from from New York to Los Angeles in the summer of 2020 with my then girlfriend. We had driven across the country, and we were living in San Diego for a month in July. And then I'm sitting there working at my computer, and I get a phone call, and it's my mother. And as I'm sure any millennial can relate to when watching this, or Gen Z, or late Gen Xer, your retired parents love calling you in the middle of the workday, and then they're like, "Why didn't you answer?" I was like, "Because I'm working. It's the middle of the day. It's 2 o'clock." So I ignored the phone call from my mother. She calls me again, and then the hair on the back of my neck stood up, because I just knew that this was a call that changes the rest of your life. Uh, this is like a call that I'm going to wish I could unknow what comes from it, but now I have to know it. And so I answer it. And to make a very, very, very long story short, my father was in the hospital in a coma, and he had been dead, brain dead for 7 minutes. He had been vomiting blood. Like, the ambulance had to come to the house to get him. So he was in the hospital for 2 weeks in a coma. And in the time that he was there, mind you, this is COVID, so we're not coming up to the hospital. We are not really able to interface. We did a couple of Zoom calls with it. We have no idea what kind of care he's truly getting. And I'll happily thank Ron DeSantis for that, because he really ruined the opportunity that we would get to be able to spend time in the hospital by encouraging Florida to break COVID regulations early. So a little FU to him for that. But what I'll say is, as he was there, we get phone calls, getting updates from the doctors. And I remember we get a call, and he asked my mother, because we were doing all these calls on speakerphone. He goes, "Oh, did your husband drink?" And she was like, "Yeah, occasionally, but also it's been COVID, so we've only really even had one bottle of wine in the past like 5 months between us." And he goes, "Are you sure?" And she goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, he explains the medical condition that he had, and he was like, he'd only really have this if he was a chronic alcoholic." And lo and behold, he says that my mother leaves the room to take the call in private because it was protecting a secret. Lo and behold, he would die 2 weeks later, when he went into kidney failure. But all that to say, my father was an alcoholic for 30 years, and I had no idea. And you talk about legacy, you talk about how you are remembered. And for 31 years of my life, at that point, I had a story of my father as an asshole. I learned this fact, and it totally changes the narrative from asshole and jerk to man who was in immense pain. He was in so much pain and so desperately wanted love and to be held. And I had no idea. And that story of how I think about him is now so different. And I don't necessarily forgive him entirely for everything he had done, but I can sit with the two ideas of who he was, of the person who did these things to me, but also the person behind the person who did all these things to me. And, the land of and, right? He was this and he was that. They're good people, but they're not my people. So, his legacy for me personally is very different. And if you look at anything, it's what propelled me to do work with people like you, and A Call to Men, and Bowie's Club, and all these other things that I'm doing, because I don't want any other father and son to have that pain that we had to carry in our relationship. Uh, so yeah, that's he's definitely played a big role in thinking about how I show up in the world to determine what is my kind of legacy or stewardship going to look like.
What is your relationship with alcohol like?
It's so I did not drink until my senior year of college. One, because the first drink I ever had was a Natty Light, and I thought it tasted like horse piss, and I was like, I'm never
It
drinking
does.
beer again. That's disgusting. But also, I was very overweight and going to college, and so I kind of said, like, I have a choice here. I can have chocolate or I can have alcohol, and I would rather have chocolate every time. So, my vice was dessert. I simultaneously did lose a lot of weight, but I put off drinking for that reason. Started drinking senior year of college. Regularly engaged, like socially, with an alcohol after that. And then yeah, okay, so yes, then he dies. And I would say didn't change for a couple of years. I will say it did make me start to think about, is there, like, do I have a proclivity for addiction now? Is there something I need to be, not that I have it now, have I always had it and now I'm aware of it? Do I now need to be more conscious of what this relationship is like? Like, am I having an unhealthy amount? So now I'm Googling, like, what is normal? Is this too much? Is this too much? Like, and
Mm,
it's not even about because I was getting blackout 3 nights a week. It was just like, is
right.
having two whiskeys after a day while chilling at home and watching a movie bad, or like having 3 beers at the when you go out to dinner or something. Like, it made me hyper conscious, and I would almost say hypercritical of all those decisions. Where and eventually I reached the place where I'm at now, which is just more so I really don't drink that much anymore, which is not because of him and his story, but just more so it doesn't fit my lifestyle anymore, and because I'm getting
Right.
older. Like, I can't recover like I used to. And I remember in January I was on a flight and I had two, or it was February maybe, I had two whiskeys and I was hungover by the time I landed. And I was just like,
Mm,
it's not worth it. Like, this is not fun. And I'm a runner. I start my days around 5:30 in the morning so I can go to the gym or go for a run. And like, I can't do that if I drank the night before. Like,
yeah.
whereas conversely, listen, I'm in California, I regularly engage with marijuana. I can have marijuana the night before. I can have an edible, smoke a joint, and wake up and be totally fine and able to do all
Yeah.
those things. So I'm going to switch those vices around a little bit. And I feel a lot better about that because I know alcohol doesn't. Listen, I don't think alcohol ultimately does make you feel good. Like, it is enjoyable when you have it, but that next morning is terrible. And again, as we get older, it gets a lot harder to recover from it. And I save it now for special occasions and travel. So, like, yesterday we went out to see my girlfriend's parents for Father's Day. So her dad likes to drink. So I had a drink with him. And then we opened a bottle of wine when we got home. But then, I probably won't drink again until my birthday in the middle of July. And then until we go to Italy in August. Like, it doesn't have the same appeal anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't drank in years and I prefer cannabis and plant medicine myself for all of
Hmm.
those reasons, including
Yep.
it makes me a better parent. Like I sleep better and I'm,
Hmm.
not drinking. And then also, um, I want to talk about self care because one
Hmm.
of, my friends have been calling me the queen of self care even before self care was a thing. And I think it's because I developed through the course of my life. Like I know what I
Hmm.
need and I know what I need to be the best version of myself. And I think that's one of the things, like I see that in you as well. And I don't see that in a lot of men your age and especially men who
Hmm.
are older than you. So let's talk about proclivity for self-care and introspection, right? Like I don't know a lot of guys that were like, "Oh, like how does this make me feel like when I'm in college
Hmm.
and other things." So let's double click on that.
I'll say this at the outset. I think something I'm trying to be really conscious of right now is the difference between self care and self soothing,
Mm,
especially in the environment that we live in today. A lot of us will say we're practicing self care, but it's really self soothing, and it's avoiding dealing with an underlying trauma, an underlying pain, a challenge you don't want to address or take accountability for. And so I'm currently in a stage where I'm trying to, like, bifurcate what do I do that's self-soothing and what do I do that's actually self-care, and like getting to tackle underlying root
and as I wrote in
problems.
the chat, survival. Some of this stuff is
Yeah, yeah.
survival, and we tell ourselves, especially for Black women and
Hmm.
um, other people of different identities.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So self-soothing versus self-care, right? And sometimes things are both. It's and.
Mhm.
Give us something that fits in one but not the other.
So I think for me, something like self-soothing is, well, it's quite frankly, it's like taking a walk to the beach and smoking a joint after a tough day of work. Like that's not helping me address my emotional response to what was going on, or my mental responses to what was going on. It's not helping me solve the problems, but it is helping me calm down. And so for me, my self-soothing activities are what brings me back to my baseline. So, it's those things. It is taking a walk. It is, cooking. It is, for me, watching an episode of The West Wing. Like those activities just help me get back to baseline. Self care is those things that help me change my baseline. So that is, how am I handling my relationship to my phone? It's building my exercise routine. It's choosing, like, who do I want to talk to and engage with in my life, having conversations with, people like you regularly. And then, my journaling practice too is a huge part of that, for helping me identify what fits in those buckets, but then also helping me have space and time for self-reflection, on what's working and what isn't. And even within journaling, my practice has changed a lot, especially in the past 6 months or so. I used, for about 3 years, I journaled every single day. And in the past 6 months, it's become like once a week or once every 10 days. And it's just, I don't need the same thing. I've had to accept that because I feel like I keep putting pressure on myself to sit down and write, but I'm also like, I don't need it in the same way right now. And that's okay. I'll go through a relationship and some
When
time
did you
off and then eventually come
start
back.
when did you start your journaling practice and how?
It was sometime in 2022, and I don't remember when. And I quite frankly don't remember why. I think the reason, I know what was going on broadly was, like, it was as the business was shutting down. Actually, this is a lie. I don't know why I said that. I do know what was happening. It was as the business was getting shut down, as a relationship was ending, and I was, this was happening at a time where I was becoming completely untethered from the life that I had, right? A 4-year relationship was ending. The business I ran for 10, 11 years and was a total part of, was my total identity, was going to disappear. I didn't know how I was going to make money next. I didn't know what I was going to do next. And also, with the end of a relationship where we lived together, was on the precipice of not knowing where I was going to live, and did proceed to live out of my car for a couple months in between there before I knew what was next. So I was just becoming so untethered. I think it was the only way to ground myself.
I find journaling one of the only, like, when my head is so full and
Mm,
I'm not sure like what I actually think about things, like that's when I feel like it like boils over and I'm like, okay, I just need to write this. And as
mhm,
Dax said
mhm,
in the
mhm,
chat, a processing tool.
mm.
I know a lot of people, I'm very aware when people say shoulds, right? Like I should be
Yeah,
doing that. I should do, and journaling is one of those things that everyone's like, I should do that. And so when people say that they do it, I always ask, what was the impetus
yeah, yeah.
and how? Going back to like, it might not work for everyone, but people should know that it's one of the tools in the toolbox that
That's
is
available. Right, right, right.
free, and it's free,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I think going back to the theme of this show, his money, I think sometimes we feel like we have to throw money at something in order for it to be
Mhm.
valuable. um, and of course our lives are enhanced so much by digital environments and technology. So yeah, I use the Calm app to meditate, and I,
Mhm.
have other things that I could do for free, but that I pay money to do to keep myself accountable in many different ways. Actually, that's a question I have for you.
Mm.
What are the apps that you pay for on your phone? So you're a digital native. You're like, I wouldn't say you're very online. You're somewhat online, right? You have like me. You're like intentional about
Yeah.
how you are online. What what are the apps that you actually pay for on your
That
phone,
is a
and how do you
great
use them?
question. So I just opened up subscriptions on my phone to see what they are. Let's see, Apple TV.
Yeah.
Bear, which is actually my favorite writing app. It's just one of these things that's got like minimal commands, minimal keystrokes. Doesn't like populate with like spell check and things like that. So you can just
Wait,
write
Bear,
and
BARE or BEAR?
BEAR.
Cool.
BEAR. Yeah, so I use that, which I love. And then Strava, which I didn't normally pay for, but I did just want to try out the pro account for a month. So for like tracking especially as I start training for the Chicago Marathon, that's really helpful. But I actually do not pay for a lot of like apps and streaming services. Well, I pay for the streaming services in terms of entertainment. So, the Netflixes, the Spotify's, the Disney Plus of the world. But in terms of apps and stuff, I don't pay for too much. It's just, um, I don't feel like I ever get enough value out of them. And then turns into homework where I'm like, I have this, I need to use it. I need to take advantage of it. And sometimes I can get enough out of like the 7-day program, but then it's also a reminder of like they're just videos on YouTube I can go to, right? Like the things I've looked at paying
True.
for before would be something like the Wim Hof, like the breathing method apps. I looked at using that for a little while, but then the videos are on YouTube. I could just go find it there and like stream it. So why pay for it?
Totally. Yeah, this comes up a lot in the personal brand development stuff I do with
Mm,
leaders around how they're spending their time and how they're spending their money. And yeah, sometimes you need the like ignition of a 7-day trial of something to be like, oh, I like
mhm.
this, but I don't need to pay for this. Or,
Yeah,
you know what? Like this thing popping up on my phone actually gets me where I am
right,
and
right.
it works for me. Yeah, I subscribe to the Channy app for astrology, the
Oh,
Calm
I love
app.
Channing.
I think those are the main like, and then yeah, same Apple TV.
Hmm.
Because Ted Lasso forever when I need an uplift. Um, and, there was a follow up question I had to that, but my friend just got me to start using Finch. Oh, interesting.
What is Finch? Self-care habit app.
Self
Okay.
care habit app, right? There's a bunch. There's Noom, right? Noom was one of the
Hmm.
ones that came out a couple of years ago. And again, it's like not everything's going to work for everyone.
Right.
And that's why I'm glad that we have lots of people leveraging technology to help us be the best versions of ourselves.
Absolutely.
Um, uh, I want to talk a little bit about your like to go on this, like how you decide to invest your money, your time,
Hmm.
all of
Hmm.
those things. What are your main revenue streams right now? What are you working to build for the future?
Hmm.
And those are your incoming streams. And then
Yeah.
I want to talk about your outgoing and how you think about this after.
Yeah. So in terms of where I make money right now, it's primarily a couple things. It's primarily two things. One is my marketing work through Loudmouth and the agency that I run, and the second is I am like a brand marketing mentor slash advisor in a media training program for health and wellness professionals. So those two things comprise the majority of my revenue as well, and there are plenty of one-offs, speaking engagements, etc. But that's really it. And then in terms of passive income investments, whether it's in the stock market or in the companies that I have invested in, and seeing occasional dividends come in through those right now. That portfolio is three things, which is Lilith, which is a female foot, not a female, it's a female owned footwear brand based in New York. Really cool. You should check them out. The second is Element, LMNT, the electrolyte supplement that I am an investor in. And then also an opportunity you introduced me to, Janna, an investor in Unrivaled, which I'm super thrilled to get to have supported financially because I love what they're doing. And
That's the
everyone
new
should.
3 on
It's
3
all women's
women's
sports.
basketball league that was started by
Yes.
the best players in the WNBA, Nafisa Collier, Brianna Stewart, and 36 others who
Mhm.
played in the first season. Yeah, I was thrilled to get access to that deal too. A longtime women's sports stan here, and the WNBA was my client in 2019, and it was really one of the catalysts for me thinking about the importance of boys and men's work, and that we have to all work together. Until men started to not see women's sports as a charity as opposed to a big money making opportunity.
And
It's
I do
gonna
want to uplift that Angel City, as far as I know, was the only professional sports team in Los Angeles that has uplifted and supported the immigrant community in the past 10 days. The Dodgers have been silent, the Rams have been silent, the Chargers have been silent, the Lakers have been silent, the Clippers have been silent. It is Angel City is, I believe, the only team that has said something. They gave out T-shirts at their game last weekend. I forget what it said, but it's like something about how we're all immigrants, or immigrants help build the city. I apologize for forgetting. So real kudos to them for understanding the importance of protecting the community that has so much poured into them.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe all athletes are activists kind of by survival. They have to advocate for themselves. They're part of, I mean, the players associations, the NBPA, the WNBPA are labor unions. And
Mhm.
so they have to advocate for themselves. And as such, they understand that all of our fights are intertwined. I think that when, here's where it's bittersweet that female athletes are not paid as much as male athletes, but male athletes feel like they have more on the line to lose when they use
Mhm.
their
Mhm.
voice. So it is complicated and complex. And I know Jenna and I have talked about the need for women's sports content everywhere, especially on the land of and I would say I'm particularly uh into like raising up the men that are hyping women's sports because until again all of us realize that it's like fantastic entertainment, it's family fun, and there's a shit ton of money to be made, it'll never actualize the way that it can and should. So yes, I'm a proud investor in Unrivaled and Round 21. And I just invested in the new Chelsea FC women's team that spun off from the men's team,
Oh, amazing.
alongside Alexis Ohanian 776 Fund. So lots of women's sports content to come on on all my channels and within Land of Anne too. Uh, your portfolio made me think of something else. Oh, tell us about this mentorship uh, to health and wellness advisors.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There is a program. So when I was working as a fractional consultant, I was an advisor to a PR firm, and they put on a health and wellness summit in New York. And I met this woman, Amy Gorin, Gorin, through that, and she is like I believe I apologize in advance because I'm going to butcher her credentials, but I believe she's an RD and an NP. And I apologize if I'm wrong, both to Amy and to anyone who does have those credentials. But she was very good at getting media appearances for herself, and then eventually, realized a lot of my peers need support doing that. So she built an online program called Master the Media. It's got like a bunch of different modules within it. And within that, I'm kind of the advisor on how do you define your brand? How do you identify your niche? How do you put together a media kit for brands to help work with you? So help kind of just be a soundboard and a mirror for the individuals who go through that program.
Sweet. Sweet. All right. Well, we'll need to talk more too about within Bowie's Club, which is
Mm,
this group of men and female allies who are uplifting the
mm,
well-being of boys and men. There's a lot of businesses brewing that need to be sprouted, and
birthed, yes.
so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that offline and tomorrow. And if
Mm,
anyone has questions about Bowie's Club, you can email me, Janna at jannamturner.com, like my handle here. Um, you also are a natural community builder, community organizer, like me, like lowercase c, have been for a long time. Running clubs, like you're
mm.
a doer. My friends call me Janna the Planner, so I feel like you're similar. Like you're a manifester, you
Yes,
make things
very true.
happen. Um, talk to us about men walking and talking, which we first heard
Hmm.
about from our mutual friend Mark Green. Shout out to
Hmm.
Mark Green, also appears here on the Land of Anne channel. Mark heard about this, I believe, from the UK. And
Hmm.
tell us about what it ignited for you.
Yeah, actually, just talked to Mark yesterday. Mark and I met through you. Actually, had been following his work for a really long time. We got the chance to meet during the election cycle and have a number of conversations and develop a friendship. And I was in New York, after the election. I was very lost. I was like, "What the hell do I do to engage men?" Because anytime we do this stuff, no matter what we do, look at what just happens, right? So what's the point? And I was just very despondent. And at that point, a couple things start syncing up. December, I move into a new neighborhood here in Los Angeles. I'm also in New York, and I meet Mark in person for the first time and join him for his walking group in New York, and telling him about just some of the different things that I'm feeling. And he was like, "Why don't you just start a walk group by you?" And I was like, "You know what? It's actually a great idea because A, I'm moving to a new neighborhood, and B, I had stopped creating content online." To your point of like having a good relationship and distance with social, for me, it was just, I don't know if I want to do this because why am I trying to affect 50,000 people? I got to affect five first. If you can't convince five people in your neighborhood to behave, change, interact differently, like what are we doing trying to accomplish that online? So that brought me to decide I'm going to start a men's walking club. And the next question is going to be, well, what is a men's walking club? A men's walking and talking club? And the answer is it's literally that. It is just guys
Literally
getting
that.
together to walk and talk to build connection and friendship. And it sounds It sounds stupid because it's so simple, but the simplicity is the point, and it is so needed. Like I will tell you to a T, for every time someone comes for the first time, the story is the same. I moved here, didn't know anyone. During COVID, I started remote work and moved to a new area, and nobody is nobody who I work with lives around me. All of my friends are my wife's friends' husbands. Like they just have no community built up, and they're all just like, I just didn't know how to find it, and everything seems so difficult, right? It's join a sports league, go to this dinner. This is literally just show up, and if it stinks, you can walk right away. Like you don't even have to continue, just go do something else.
Right. You made it
So it's
low
been
risk.
Exactly.
Low
It's as
risk.
low risk, low barrier to entry as possible. You're not committing to anything in the future. And if you're uncomfortable, you can leave. Like it's really not a big deal. And so it's been really beautiful. We had I would say for walks, we've had anywhere from 3 to 17 people show up. We've got over 100 people who are on our like community list now. We've gotten some really nice attention, which has been really cool. I had a Business Insider article last week, and I think the LA Times is going to be doing a piece on us soon. So it's been a really, really beautiful community to build.
You've also, like, not that we want to highlight the negative, it's helpful, I believe, especially in this community, to understand what some of, low risk, like low barrier to
Mhm.
entry. What have been some of the like emotional barriers though? Like some guys have been like, what, like, are you trying to sell me
Yeah,
something?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
there's,
So
we,
yeah, so when I first put this out there, I published about it on Reddit, and my belief is like I think like most people, or at least most people from my small bucket of age demographic, are like always skeptical of what we see online and people inviting us to things. And so my measure was like, I'll just kind of give my bio and explain who I am, and hopefully that'll make people feel more comfortable coming to this. So I had mentioned in there, oh, that I'm on the board of a call to men, to me being like, oh, he's a reputable person, he like kind of does this work, like he's safe. And a lot of people took that as like, oh, is this a recruiting event or like a donor event that you're going to try to
mm,
build people from? And so I
wow.
had to be like, oh, no, 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 like that's actually not my goal. Like that's not what this is about. This is literally just like community, connection, friendship. So there was I think a lot of skepticism. People were looking for reasons not to come. And I think that was the first one. The second was a lot of people being concerned about like, are politics going to be discussed here? And I talked about that a lot with Mark. I went through a lot of reflection on that myself, because for me, it's really hard to remove politics from any space. Everything is inherently political, and I am a very political person. However, again, if like the objective for me is building connections in support of recognizing and creating the world that I want to see, the only way we can accomplish that is well, there's a couple different ways we can accomplish that, but the first two probably involve either a lot of imprisonment or a lot of death. And I don't think we're going to do those. Then the only way to do it is getting people to the same table. And that to me means we don't talk about those things here. And if you break off with someone, and you get a beer afterwards, or you go to dinner, or you play golf, or you take a pottery class, do whatever you want. That's your friendship that you're now building outside of this. But this little space for an hour or 2 hours a week, that issue those issues are not intended to be discussed. That, religion, and then I say no hard selling, are the only three things. And it's been good, because I've had people that I would probably not normally interact with come, and I know that for a space that's all male identifying individuals, I would say plurality, if not majority, white men, we can create spaces for evolution, growth, community, and conversation that might not be safe for other people. And hopefully that moves us in the direction of slowly eliminating these beliefs, or changing ideas, changing minds, whatever. And that's work that I can do as a white man for my community.
Yeah. One of the things that's coming up for me, we talk about male friendships and
Mm,
uh you know, first of all, it's like, oh, are you trying to sell me something? You're trying to shake me down for money, whether that's for an
mhm,
organization or you're trying to sell me something. So there's, a lot of layers here. But one of the things that's coming up for me also, especially as someone who, again, a natural community builder like you, I've like collected great people throughout my life,
mm,
but not all of those people are everyone else's people. And to this point of good people who might not be your people,
Mhm.
It's not that I'm a different person when I'm with my mom friends in the neighborhood or with my, clients or with my, um, colleagues and women who hype each other and like women's groups in the
Mhm.
city. But I do get to experience my multidimensionality through the lens of all of
Mm.
those different people in a way that makes me sad that men by and large do not, because you may have one group of friends, let alone like you're not going to have like two or three different
Mhm. Mhm.
I mean, again, we say no man is a monolith.
Right.
Or men are not a monolith. But I think that's interesting too, right? This idea, and maybe, the marketer and comms person in me who's trying to leverage the male ego for good. I think too, in these walking talking men things, maybe there's merit to saying like, you don't have to be best friends with these people, like
Mm.
with all of us, like we are, we all have full busy lives. And but I think there's something about allowing for the multidimensionality of people in this space, because
Mm.
we want to say like, are you like me or are you not like me, right? Like that's our
Right.
first. And I talk about this in my personal brand alignment work all the time, that the onus is on us to be understood for who we are,
Right. Right.
right? And oftentimes we're misunderstood. Sometimes it doesn't matter. I don't need everybody to get me, right? In fact, a lot
Mhm.
of people in this
Mhm.
world don't know what to make of me. Probably same for you and a lot of others that are here right now. I know it's the same for my friend Jenna. um but who matters if they get me and if they
Right.
understand
Right.
me,
Right.
right? And to this point though, it's like, even you find this on the playground as a parent, it's like, oh, are you a mom who works or are you a mom who doesn't work, as if that's a binary,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And we have lots of friends reinventing that conversation in women's spaces, and I think
Mhm.
the men's reframe of that conversation will probably come in a few years, based on if
Right.
history tells us anything. But talk to me about your different pockets and your different the things that you are able to talk about, or parts of you that can come up more to the surface in different groups.
Yeah, no, I think it's a big question, and this actually is a huge part of benefits that I have extracted from A Call to Men. There was a documentary that A Call to Men was involved in making about called Intentionally Erased, and it was about the
Mm,
experiences of Black trans women. And the documentary itself was about three Black trans women and three, I believe, Black cishet men. I believe the cishet component, and it was them being in conversation over the course of a weekend just about their experiences and trying to understand one another. And within it, one of the women made a comment about needing to carve out your square foot in the world. Just like go do your thing, be your person, be who you are, decide that place. And that really, 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 really resonated with me. I still think about it to this day. It is helping me define who I am. So to your component about pockets, I think about that as square foot because that was coming for me at a time when, again, I was going through all these things of a relationship ending, not knowing what I was doing professionally, still processing the death of my father from a few years before. I felt so untethered from the world, and I didn't know who I was trying to show up as or be anymore. And I said, you know what? Like, I've tried so long to bifurcate different pieces of myself and only have certain identities in certain places. And I was kind of just like, fuck that. Like, no, I'm gonna be who I am in every room I walk into. And that's it. Like there is no debate or conversation around this anymore. You can get on this train or you cannot, but like I'm gonna be on the tracks no matter what. And so that kind of helped me define like this is my square foot. I'm going to shed people along the way because the square foot can only hold so much. But when you carve out that place, as she says in the documentary, like you're going to find the people who are supposed to stand next to you. And if that means I'm going to spend some time like in isolation or wandering the desert, that's okay because I will find those people eventually because they exist, because I'm not the only one who feels that certain way. Now, that said, to your question, there is an on ramp to the experience that you sometimes give people as you're testing out. A, is this a safe space for me? B, is this person at a place, forget about my own safety, is it safe for them to experience this? Are they able to handle all of this at once? Like who knows where they are on their journey? So I think about how I show up there not as a function of like what parts of me so much am I comfortable bringing, but what is it fair and ethical for me to bring based on what somebody else might be able to like handle or consider. um, trying to also balance that with the idea of like I don't want to have people's reactions for them. I want to get they deserve the ability to react or decide or think or whatever. So I think it's knowing a little bit about that, but all of that said, like I am never going to silence a part of myself. Like I might tone it down a little bit for something, but the person who walks around Costco saying that clothing has no gender is going to be the same person who shows up at your executive forum roundtable and like don't invite me. Like I don't want to be there if you're not
Right.
comfortable with it be with me
Wait, you
being
have to
me.
tell this story because, well, because it starts off also with your sweatshirt, your blue sweatshirt.
Yes, yes. So
So this
I
is
have
this is the land of
I,
Anne story, yeah.
I guess I can get it. This is an informal conversation. So I have a blue sweatshirt that says empathy, which I'm now recognizing is backwards on the screen here.
It doesn't
Um,
look backwards for me. I don't know if it
Okay,
does
good.
for
So then
others, but
maybe it's
okay.
just on mine. So I have this blue sweatshirt. I was with a friend of mine at a thrift shop out here in LA, and we were browsing around, and she brought it over, and she's like, "You have to get this." And I was like, "Oh my god, yes, of course." She's like, "It's a women's large, but like it should fit okay." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, why not? Like whatever." So I bought it, wear it all the time, and but for me it was an unlock because I was like, with rare exception, I could really shop all parts of a store. Like there's no reason why I need to avoid the women's section. Like it's all just clothing. Like it's an inanimate object. It has no gender. It has no identity to it. Clothing has no gender. I can wear whatever I want. And so a few months later, another friend and I were at Costco, huge Costco fan, and
Okay.
they had these beautiful women's shackets, which is the shirt jacket. For those who are unfamiliar, easiest point of comparison is the flannel. And it was like these $17, really nice, really comfy flannels. We were getting ready to take a trip out to Joshua Tree. If you know anything about the area, like, yeah, hot during the day, but can get very cold at night. And I was like, perfect. Let's get some of these shackets. So we each get one, great piece of clothing. And then a few weeks later, I'm actually wearing it, and I go back to Costco, and I see a man and his wife standing in front of them, and she was like, "Oh, honey, like you love these kind of things. Like you should try this on, get this, whatever." And he was like touching it. He was like, "Yeah, it's really soft." And he was like thinking about it. And he was like, "Oh, it's a women's thing." And as I'm walking by, I hear this, and I just kind of push in the car and I go like, "Well, clothing has no gender, sir." And then I kind of keep going, and I hear him be like, "Yeah." He's like, "You know what? Yeah, I can wear it. Like, I can get it." And I was like, "I did it. I did it today. I solved the problem of gender-based clothing. Like, we're good."
Yes. I mean, we can never underestimate our power and influence.
Hmm.
And, our instincts in those moments to make it human and say something. I was walking through the park the other day and I heard this guy and his wife talking, and they were like, "Yeah, I should have just trusted my intuition." And I just go, "Always trust your intuition," and kept walking.
Well, it's so
So,
silly because it's even little things like my Trader Joe's plays really good music. So I always end up like dancing or singing when I'm walking around the supermarket. And like you'll see people smile at you, or like people will be like, "Oh, that's so like you look like you're having a great time. Keep it up." Like whatever, like fun stuff like that. And it's like I'm just being myself, and it's bringing some people joy. And like how great is that? How amazing. Like who knows what impact that has? Maybe they had a shitty phone call before they walked in. Maybe they're now noticing the music that's playing in there, and they're feeling really excited about that because it's a song they really like. It's just like it's these little things where it's like just show up as yourself, and like you will I don't want to say rewarded because it's not about gaining something, but it's like you will be seen for being that person, and you don't know what impact, positive or negative, that could have.
you will feel superhuman. It's highly
Yeah.
likely you will feel superhuman. Um, I'm gonna bring it to music because you talked about dancing at Trader Joe's. I love dancing. I dance everywhere. I have a dance break playlist on my Spotify when I just like literally need to get up and move. Uh, we also love live music and concerts,
Mm.
and I'm feeling very excited because I have a lot of concerts in my pipeline that I have bought tickets for. So I'm gonna share, and then I'm gonna pass it to you to share because I also know you were in Minneapolis for a Purple
Mhm,
celebration.
mhm,
So my most memorable concert, well, actually, my most memorable concert is 1991, the Born at the Right Time tour, Paul Simon. I saw it twice at the
mhm.
Worcester Centrum and at Old Orchard Beach. And this weekend, my husband and my son and I are going to see Paul Simon at the Beacon Theater here in New York
Oh,
City.
amazing.
So I'm super excited about that. And then my husband and I are going down to Summer Stage in Asbury Park to see Bleachers play on June
Mm,
28th at like Stone Pony Summer Stage. I got Stevie Nicks tickets to see in Boston with
I
my
love Stevie
mom
Nicks.
in August. I got Haim tickets. You know, they have a new I Quit album coming out
Mm-hmm.
that's so good. I got Lord tickets also. Um, and I feel like there's one other. Oh, Lady Gaga in August.
Mm, yeah, we got
Lady Gaga.
tickets for that too.
Yeah, and we're bringing our son to that also because I think she is a healthy role model and icon that he needs to
Mm,
experience.
oh, good. Yeah, we're
Okay,
going
tell
to
us what's
that.
in your queue.
So we've done a lot already this year. I don't think we have a bunch on the back end. Like I'm seeing, we have Lady Gaga, and then I would like to try to get tickets to Shakira. She was supposed to play this weekend in LA, and I don't know if they said why she canceled it, but I think it probably has something to do with everything that's happening here. So hoping to see Lady Gaga, hoping to see Shakira, and then um, I think that's it. My girlfriend has tickets to go see Beyonce one more time, but we did a lot in the beginning of the year. We don't have so much lined up in the back half right now. And then last year we also did a lot. So it was pretty busy. But I'll just say one thing that's funny because you mentioned Paul Simon. Um, my girlfriend is black. I'm obviously white, and we're always having the conversations around like who are the cultural icons that have currency in your community, but that I have like no idea who they are. And one that comes up in that direction from me to her is Paul Simon. And I was like, you don't know Graceland? I was like, you don't know Parsley, Sage, Rosemary, and Thyme? Like, how have you never heard this before? So it's funny that you mentioned Paul Simon. But yeah, those are the things on my agenda. But music adjacent that I will mention is that in November, I have tickets to go see the Purple Rain musical in its world premiere slash previews in Minneapolis, which I'm super excited about. For those who do not know me, I am a huge Prince fan. My phone case, my tattoo, like he is everywhere in my household. We have a Prince bathroom, so I'm really looking forward to that. And it's the name of the stream today. Money Don't Matter Tonight, a Prince song. So really looking forward to that. And I only got to see him in concert once, so now I take every opportunity I can to see cover bands, performances, whatever.
Yeah, I got to see him at MSG, which I'm so grateful for. It must have been
Mm,
in like the 2010s or something, based on
mm,
what I remember wearing and where I was. Um, yeah, it was an epic show. Music brings us together. Music is so healing in so many ways.
mm.
Uh, do you have a hard stop with us? Because we can stream for a long time.
I have a meeting at 10:30, so probably good until whenever you want to go.
Okay, yeah, let's keep going a little bit because I want to talk about this idea of our value in the market in
Mm,
capitalism. As an entrepreneur, I have very rarely in my life like been on a W-2 in terms of like salary, and basically we know people who W-2, you get a salary, some people get commission, bonuses, all those kinds of things. As an entrepreneur, you give yourself some salary, you take a cash distribution. Um, but I think that we've been talking about the change in media and
mhm,
marketing. We've been talking about the changing the way we work. We've been talking about the evolution of skills. Um, and then of course we have AI coming. But
mhm,
when I think about money and I think about capitalism and we think about having to name your price, right? Um, how have you set pricing for yourself,
mm,
for your business, for work that you're doing? You don't have to have all the answers. None of us are an expert on this, and this is a
no,
dynamic market. But I think those are the kinds of things that I want to talk about on this show as we think about how we're all going to build a future. And
mhm,
I mean, we live in a country where like people don't even make minimum wage. Like people don't even minimum wage is not even necessarily a living wage for huge parts of our country, and that has to be
mhm,
said out loud before we go into like our ability to call someone up and say, hey, pay me this money.
right.
But how have you thought about and made like what has been your calculus in the past when you think about what to charge for various things that you do when you're kind of being paid to be Jonathan and bring all those pieces of you to the mix?
the answer to that question is that I'm terrible at it. So I do hope you have those conversations going forward so that I can learn from them. No, I think we were part of the problem with always having been an entrepreneur, I think, is that you don't learn like the price, especially within service-based businesses, you don't learn the pricing scale in the same way. Like it would have been so helpful to learn from whether it's another like small to medium sized agency founder like yourself, whether it's somebody who came to me from working at a big creative group like an Ogilvy or BBDO, to learn what a pricing scale looks like and pricing structures and pricing models. And we were building it from the ground up. You know, our first packages were a few $100s a month. And with a business with four co-founders, like that makes no sense. We were not able to do anything from that. And then, you know, we would have clients for whom they paid the same price for 6 years because it was just a great relationship, and we didn't want to risk
Yeah.
rocking the boat, even though it's only fair to increase with at least the cost of inflation, if nothing else, you know? So I think I'm definitely better about it now than I was. We became much more upfront about asking about budget and those thorny types of questions that people tend to avoid. You know, kudos to one of my business partners who, you know, kind of raised the question at one point. And I think it got bastardized and the form changed, but the spirit remains the same, which is, you know, what's your budget? Because there's a big difference between buying a Toyota and buying a Mercedes. Point being, if you want a proposal for $50,000 and a proposal for $5 million, those are really different projects and resources. And you owe it to me to tell me what you want so I can give you the right type of project. Like, give me a framework. You don't have to give me the exact number, but give me a range, give me an idea, because you can't not tell me what your resources are when we get into this. Because also, you might give me an answer that tells me I actually can't pitch what you want, regardless of which direction
Exactly.
we're talking about. And that's a waste of both of
Totally.
our times to not
Well,
tell
it's
me.
so annoying when people are like, well, what does it cost? Right. And
Mhm.
that's where it's, yeah, you can't meet uncommunicated
Yeah,
expectations. And
Dax nailed it with that. Yeah.
this comes up a lot in service-based like marketing things, going back to like, I mean, I ran a public
Mhm.
relations firm for 15 years. It was like professional ego management, right?
Mhm.
People have, when you have an earned media mandate, or even when you're doing paid marketing, it's like ultimately, do people feel good? Does the client
Right.
feel good? Are they, a happy client, so to speak? And there's a lot of
Mhm.
different pieces that go into that. And yeah, often it's like, well, what's your budget? It's like, well, how much do things cost? And it's like, yeah, same thing. Like I could give you a $50,000 plan. I could give you a $500,000 plan. And then they're like, great, yeah, I'll take those two plans. And it's like, no, like that's not, which can you do? Like, what are we doing together? And what do you want to happen? Yeah, I think that so much of what I hope to accomplish with this show and stream that we're doing here,
Mhm.
within the framework of the land of and, is to talk about all the things that are behind the dollar sign and the numbers that we are looking at.
Yeah, you nailed it, and I think that, I've gotten better about it by having at least, like, the right size numbers in mind, but it's still a learning process, and I don't think I've ever perfected it because I think there's also still, you know, we always used to say as an agency, there are, there are, like, 5 different ways to get paid on a project. There's financial, there's relationships, there's learning a new skill, there's portfolio, and there was a 5th one that I'm blanking on right now. Um, but those are all like equally valuable, and you can put a dollar value on some of those things that makes it worth it. But I think I'm still always, I think the one where we still have the most shame and difficulty and uncertainty and uncommunicated expectations is still around the money piece. And also it's really easy to get exploited on the others and not ever get the thing you really need, which is the money component of it. And I know, you know, you and I talk about that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, for a while I would say there was a period where my agency was, like in one of our steep trajectories of taking on, bigger brands and bigger companies. And there were some people that could not afford our retainers. And so, it would make me sad, right? I'd be like, oh, I really want to work on that. Like, I already have so
Mhm.
many ideas for them. I'm so bummed that we can't work on it. And so then I started saying to myself, okay, I've never regretted not getting a client that couldn't afford me. To your point though, about all those different pieces that of ways that we can get paid. We talk a lot about
Mhm.
alternative assets, time as an asset class.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
something is if it's like, oh, like I can get that done pretty easily, that, there's all these different pieces. And that for me was my entree into becoming an angel investor and becoming an equity
Mhm.
advisor in companies, because I would look at, okay, like I can allocate this to, I really do want to work on this thing. And, for those watching who don't know my story, I did not go to business school. I started my business when I was 23. I ran it for 15 years, been in my agency after agency era for the last couple of years as I'm, building Antenna up and Bowie's Club and other things. Um, but it was, again, I didn't go to business school, so I saved time and money, and I got to be making money while I was learning. But same
Mm,
thing, I just started taking equity in exchange for services to learn how deal mechanics worked, to learn that, people would say, "Oh, my investors." It was so clear that the investors held the power in a business.
mm,
And so for me, it was like, okay, well, I want to talk to your investors. You need to understand qualitatively what we are doing so they see it
mhm.
in the whole picture of what they are building and investing in. Um, but I also wanted to be an investor.
Right.
And did you ever take equity in exchange for services? I mean, I know you advise in so many different capacities.
Yeah. I've explored it, but I don't think I've ever had a business put in, I advise as an investor to some of the companies that I'm invested in, but I've never taken equity for advisorship. But I've also never been presented with an opportunity that made that feel worthwhile to me.
Right.
If
Yeah.
the right one presented itself, absolutely might consider
Yeah. Yeah, if anyone's looking for an advisor for their business that is
it.
going to have $1 billion exit in a couple of years,
Yeah, please, please, we're ready. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Come to Jonathan and Janna and Jenna, and Kieran and Samantha and Janice. Uh, yeah, because we can build world-changing businesses and make a lot of money doing so, and then
Mhm.
be able to regenerate and redistribute that to all the other things that we need to proliferate in this world. Um, what we haven't talked about, we've talked about some of the inflection points in your, you know, career and trajectory and like selling the
Mhm.
business and all of that. Um, have you ever felt the feeling of sufficiency and enoughness?
As it relates to money or just generally?
I would say enoughness, period.
In fleeting moments, I think yes. I think financially, I think being an entrepreneur, I don't know, I don't think you ever feel that way, especially a service-based one. You're constantly like, where's the next client gonna come from? This one ends in 6 months. Where am I finding the next thing, the next thing, the next thing? So I think there it's really tough. But I think reaching a much again, what I said at the beginning of the conversation, this framework that somebody gave me of something for my head, my heart, and my wallet has helped me create a lot more peace with the different components of who I am. And knowing that like I can be so full in those other two buckets is okay if a different bucket is weaker or a little bit more empty right now. So that has helped me create a lot more peace in my life because I can see my impact beyond just what I do as a marketing professional as having a lot of value there. So I think there are moments now that I get that, or I don't know if enoughness is what I would call it. I would maybe call it peace. That to me is when I feel enough. Like I'm good. I'm doing it. I'm okay.
Yeah. So enoughness is a feeling of peace. Yeah, like a whole body peace. I know.
Hmm.
For me, same thing. Running a PR firm where everyone wants buzz and wants more people talking about them. It's like, how do you know when the day is done? There's always
Right.
more. There's always more people to ping. There's always more news to read. There's always
Yep.
more, especially when you're a curious person like you and I. It's like, just the enormity of content that's out there.
Really. Yeah.
Because that's what comes up for me. Like I've been thinking about this lately. Like, I have so many things that I want to read. And it's not even like I should read that. Like, I legitimately want to read it. I want to engage
Yeah.
with the
Yeah. Yeah.
content.
Yeah.
And I feel scarcity of time. Do I always feel scarcity of time? No.
Right.
I'm really enjoying being in this land of Ann channel because it feels like a little place where we're sitting with smart people solving big problems, which is when I am in my place of sufficiency and
Mm.
peace because I feel like there's things to look forward to. You've probably heard me say this. Activism is my Xanax.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think it's the antidote to anxiety. Um, Okay, there's so many things, other things that we could talk about, and we're gonna have to have you back on here. And we also should start thinking about what the JJ show looks like
Looks like.
here in Land tomorrow we'll be on Bowie's Club together for three
Yes,
hours.
really
I know
looking
some
forward
folks
to
here
it.
had questions about Bowie's Club. Bowie's Club is a group of stakeholders in men's well-being, people who are uplifters, people who are uplifting the well-being of boys and men, coming together explicitly to do so. We talk a lot about where do the aspirations for collaboration meet up with competitive realities of operating within the systems that we are operating within. And so if anyone has questions about it, please holler at me. It's a very kind of organic and growing community and movement. It was started, if we want men to feel less lonely at scale, we need the men who are already doing the work and already seeing the world this way to come together, as well as the women who are championing that and understand that um, gains for all of us are gains for all of us, and that none of us are okay until all of
Mhm.
us are okay. Um, well, thank you for joining us on the His Money stream here on Land of And. Thank you to Jenna and the whole
Happy
Land
to.
of And production team for creating this space for us, both like technologically, as well as emotionally and creatively. It's an honor to be part of this group, and Jonathan, I think we'll definitely be having you back on this stream and the Land of And broader community soon.
Of course, thank you so much for having me. It was so nice to have this conversation. Thank you for everybody who helped make this possible. And yeah, I hope to be back, and I'm excited to continue this conversation with you tomorrow.
Yeah. All right. To be continued. See everyone soon.